Hello, everyone. This is Ken Rugg. I'm the Chief Product and Strategy Officer here at Enterprise DB, and I'm going to be your host for the webinar today about databases in the cloud, today's realities and tomorrow's promise. I'm joined by Noel Yuhanna. I'm very excited about that, Principal Analyst at Forrester. He will be providing some explanation of the benefits and challenges of running databases in the cloud, both in the public cloud and in hybrid environments, and also talking a little bit about the future for cloud databases and where we see things headed as well. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded, and it's going to be available for you, both in terms of the slides, being able to download the slides, and also getting the recording of the video to see it anytime you'd like to, or to share with your teams. Your lines are currently muted, but we do have the chat up. So if you have questions, you want to inject something into the dialogue, that'd be great. Love to make it interactive as much as we can. We'll also, as we go through, we'll be having some polls. So you can see we've got one up now. If you could, we'll be looking for your input in terms of how you're actually using databases in the cloud, and are you using databases in the cloud? I know it's new for some people, but for others, it's kind of old hat. So we want to better understand how that's all going on in your organizations. We've scheduled an hour, and we want to be respectful of the time, so we'll try to keep it to that. But we expect the presentation to last about 30 minutes with 10 minutes of Q&A. So maybe we'll end a little early, just so you have a little bit of extra time in your day. But we'll go old song as we need to on the Q&A if we've got a lot of action and a lot of questions for you today. And with that, I will turn it over to Noel and let him get started on talking about the future of cloud databases. Right?
Thanks, Ken. This is Noel Yuhanna, and I'm glad to be actually on this webinar to talk about databases in the cloud, today's realities and tomorrow's promises. So I speak to about 3 to 4 customers every day at Forrester from inquiry perspective, and these are companies from financial services, retailers, healthcare, manufacturing, oil and gas, you name it. And what we have seen is that certainly, cloud adoption is picking up quite rapidly in all of these enterprises, in vertical industries, and what's interesting is that certain deployments are coming in more rapidly in certain sectors, and some of these are very large deployments, into tens and hundreds of terabytes, and even petabytes actually in the cloud, I guess, So, and in fact, certain organizations have made this even mission critical to deploy. And certain organizations are saying, well, we're not going to do mission critical in certain things. We're going to probably do it in a gradually incremental way. Certain things will go first and then second. So I'll talk more about it as to what's going on in the industry out there in terms of adoption, in terms of the use case scenarios we see out there, in terms of the concerns people have with the cloud, and what is your strategy should be going forward for databases in the cloud. Okay, next slide. So as we know it, cloud offers many benefits to organizations. So if you look at it in all those areas, you got faster time to value kind of notions, implementation wise, and there's all these opportunities out there from what companies are doing out there, right? So it's certainly many different things, from time to value, from lower cost, from elastic scale, ecosystem, self-service, agility. So all of the benefits kicks in when it goes to the cloud, I guess, right? So in fact, one of the reasons why companies are moving to the cloud is lower cost, actually. People save 20%, 30%, 70% when moving from on-premise to the cloud. And and obviously cloud offers you the scalability thing, right? Elastic scale, Sometimes, you know, in these modern applications that people are building, previously we used to do capacity planning. Remember those days? Right, we gotta have 16 CPUs running with 1 terabyte of memory. Today you don't know how scalable your application is going to be. In fact, it could actually scale so rapidly that it may be just requiring resources which are ample. I guess that I need from 16 CPUs to go to 64 CPUs right away, and then by the time you get the hardware in, it's too late, right? So you want to have this dynamic provisioning of resources, right? So what is called the elastic scale, which is critical for organization. Especially in the modern era of these applications you're building, especially the mobile applications, where you may have a million users hitting on your applications in a couple of weeks, actually, right? So it's amazing. So also, people are looking for cloud from a self-service perspective. It needs to be simplified, easy to deploy. We need to focus on the business problems rather than doing the technology things, right? In the past, we had looked at technology um, in terms of managing the servers and databases and tuning them as much. The automation is obviously starting to take off. Well, we want to focus more on the trying to solve the business problems. A decade ago, we used to have building one application called ERP every year. Right? We have to build this once a year or whatever. But today, people are building like a dozen new applications a month. Now, when you're building a dozen new applications, you need to provision databases, right? And this is one of the biggest problem I think organizations are facing. Where, well, how do you provision databases rapidly? How do I make this databases more scalable, elastically driven, agile, and fast time to value, right? So this is what cloud actually offers you. This facilities, I guess. So this is the whole notion why people are moving to the cloud. It's not just about cost. It's also about scale. It's also about performance. It's all about self-service. It's also being agile. So, okay, next slide. So I guess the reality is organizations fail because of many issues. Some are unexpected, as we know it, right? So when they go to the cloud, they realize, yeah, cloud is pretty cool. Actually, let's go to the cloud. But then they realize that, well, we got security issues. We got governance controls issues. We got latency issues because we got to move data from on-premise to the cloud. The network is slow, I should say. Sometimes you want to move a terabyte of data from on-premise to the cloud. Well, maybe a truck carrying the tapes would be faster than just copying the data on the network, actually. So latency issues kicks in, I guess, in certain regards. We have seen customers talk about a lot about that. Sometimes the solutions out there in the cloud lack automation. They still want you to do all of the things what you were doing on premises, I guess. So it defeats the purpose. Sometimes to even go to the cloud because the vendor solutions are not really as automated or autonomous. Legacy data still lives on premises. Sometimes you can't move them, into the cloud so easily, right? Sometimes they're unclear SLAs. When they will say, okay, we will support you, 5 nines, when in reality you're getting 3 nines. So you got to be careful about what SLAs you're getting in the cloud, right? I mean, this is very important. Sometimes the SLAs may not be 5 nines; it may be 3 nines or 4 nines. So take a closer look at those things. Hidden cost. Sometimes the disaster recovery, the high availability could be an add-on cost. Sometimes things like patching, upgrades, maybe an add-on cost, right? So you got to look at those hidden costs. Backup and recovery may not be included in the whole services out there, right? Monitoring may not be there of your servers. You've got to monitor yourself. If an instance goes down for database, um, you know, they may not be, the cloud providers may not be actually giving you any alerts, so to speak, because you may have been instance management being done by yourself. So there are some issues around some of those things you got to look at. So these are realities. If you look at it in the red, this is what we come across with customers, as I mentioned, in different vertical industries. So Okay, next slide. So what is a cloud database, right? I mean, well, okay, so I guess we got a poll coming up. I guess so. Is yeah okay. Is someone going to talk about it? The poll choices.
Sure. Yeah, so just trying to get experience on DBAS, if you have any experience, whether you're just curious about it or trying it out or using it in your organization more broadly, you know. So we'll get through that with some of your inputs, and we'll close it out quickly. We apologize we didn't see the poll overlapping the slides as much in the trial, so but appreciate your answers. Okay, back to you, Noel.
Okay, so so what's a cloud database, right? I guess cloud database is actually an on-demand, secure, scalable, self-service database that automate has automated provisioning and administration to support new and existing application and system of insight. You know, the important word is on demand, right? It's on demand. You actually build these databases on demand. You can shut it down. You can bring it up for a minute if you wanted to. Actually, no one actually does it for a minute, I think. But you'd probably bring it for like a day or for a week. I'm testing on some certain applications. I can bring it up and bring it down. I just pay for what I've used for the cloud. It's secure. People will argue that, well, it's not secure in the cloud, and I think there's some echo going on. So in terms of security, people say that there's obviously it's not secure, and I would say the cloud providers obviously do offer you a lot of security, but obviously you have to add on to that uh, platform additional security measures like encryption on the network, encryption at rest, with certain access controls and maybe tokenization and all the good stuff. So you obviously have to make effort to secure it as well. You don't just move data to the cloud and expect it to be all protected, so to speak. Scalability is important. Self-service, as I mentioned, is a key fundamental of cloud databases, which needs that. Hey, I need to actually manage this automatically as much as possible. So next slide. So, if you look at the benefits of clouds, there is the on-demand provisioning, right? I mean, I can provision databases rapidly. Now, today I know organizations talk about it. Like, if a developer walks up to a DBA and say, "Hey, I need a database," what would be the answer? Well, the DBA will tell, "Okay, come back next week. We'll have a database ready for you, or come tomorrow." What if I can build a database in a minute or in a few seconds, right? That's what cloud is all about. Cloud enables to do this provisioning so rapidly, right? This is a game changer. This exactly is what the people are doing today, because they're building so many dozens of these applications that demand auto provisioning. Scale, as I mentioned, you want to scale up and scale down. Maybe you want 16 CPUs, 32 CPUs or cores. You can scale up and down. Administration being autonomous as much as possible, from a backup recovery, disaster recovery, tuning, optimization, even loading, unloading data, patching, security patching as well. So all these administration things can be done in an autonomous manner as well, right? Cost effective. You pay for what you use from the server perspective. I think is where the really value comes in. Tooling is also pretty cool, actually. Most of the tooling provided by cloud database vendors will vary, but the goal should be obviously simplified tooling. Like I said, you want to simplify it with a few clicks as much as possible, and not actually have on premises requires sometimes more effort trying to manage these databases versus cloud, right? Time to value, the dedicated or multi-tenant environment is important. You can have dedicated servers running in the cloud as well, which is managed services as well. So you can actually have these different formats in the cloud. You can be multi-tenant, shared resources, or you could actually have dedicated as well, right? And we talked about security as well. Next slide. I also want to talk about hybrid. Hybrid comes up quite often in a discussion, um, because obviously it's not just about cloud, right? I mean, it's not just about putting everything in the cloud. But what if I want to use hybrid? Why do we want to use hybrid, right? That's the first question. Well, certain data could live on premise, and the reason could be because of security reasons. Well, I'm not. I want to keep my data on premises because of it's got a lot of customer data. It's got a lot of sensitive data, right? But I still want to use sometimes cloud uh, resources, right, as well. So hybrid cloud databases are these new emerging databases that say, well, we could actually have on-premises databases, but also extend the platform for on-premises into the cloud. Cloud bursting, automation, platform extension is also existing there. Uh, this is obviously evolving as well. Hybrid cloud also means sometimes you want to sometimes have deployments running on premises, certain deployments running in the cloud, yet you want to have a management control over those two environments with a single window or UI or tooling, as opposed to having them separate tools, right? So you don't want to have a separate tool for cloud, sometimes separate tool for on-premises, trying to manage them. You want to have a common tool or a UI so that DBAs can manage them, comprehensively, as if it's all in a single location, right? So that's the real advantage of hybrid cloud databases as well. And I think, and as I mentioned, on-premises extension to the cloud is obviously emerging with automation and cloud bursting, where you want to extend the resources on-premises to the cloud. If I had 16 CPUs on premises and I was running to the max limit, and all of a sudden I had more users coming in, can I extend that 16 CPUs to 32 CPUs, right? That's what cloud bursting is all about. You got to move certain workloads onto the cloud, or even use the platform in the cloud for extension for CPU, memory, disk, network resources in the cloud. So as if the platform itself extended automatically, right? So that's the whole idea. Hybrid cloud is obviously has been getting traction as well. So next slide. Now, if you look at it in terms of the use cases, there is many use cases of cloud databases today. An important one is a 360-degree view of the customer. This is one of the most important, I think, use cases, just because a lot of companies today are building this different types of doing churn analysis, upsell, cross-sell, ad campaigns, target marketing, promotion planning, new launches, all of these things going on, and they have to do with customer, right? Because at the end of the day, every company has customers, right? Whether they are companies or they are end user customers, right? And you actually have to know the customers well today in order to sell in the market, in order to retain customers is difficult. Now, the cloud databases offer you the opportunity that, hey, I can build these databases without knowing what sizes of databases I need, because cloud databases offer you that flexibility as we talked about it. So and knowing about the customer entails that I will be getting information about the customer from clickstream, from logstream, from different social media, Twitter and Facebook data, into maybe into these customer database. And so the size of these will vary, right? You want to be able to have this available to different applications running, whether you're doing ad campaigns, campaign applications, or churn analysis applications, and what have you, right? So this is an important area we've seen growth. In fact, I think more than 35% of enterprises are already starting to planning on building these customer databases in the cloud. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for you guys listening on this webinar to actually start to look at those opportunities for building this customer database in the cloud. There's also other use cases we're seeing out there. You got actionable insights. You got obviously different types of real-time insights. right time insights, and these are new generation of insights. These are beyond your data warehouses, by the way, because we want to be able to do real time analysis. The data needs to be all integrated, collected from many sources, and cloud is a good platform for that. Just because the fact that it's scalable, but also a lot of data today is born in the cloud actually, as opposed to on premises. So again, this is a good opportunity to look into those when you're looking at your planning for database strategy in 2018 going forward. This is something you should be looking at, building this whole new real-time insights platform in the cloud. There's also a line of businesses, focused analytics, IoT analytics, fraud detection, security analysis, risk analysis, so on and on and on. So there are many of these use cases, the cloud offers. The real reason why you want to go with the cloud database is, as I mentioned, cost savings, but the scale and the performance and low latency access to information really makes it appealing. Plus all of the application benefits, right? The mobile applications and also the web application benefits as well. So next slide. So so what's the future of database cloud databases? Well, the adoption of cloud databases will double from the existing 40%, by 2020. So obviously, there's a lot more happening with the adoption of the database for cloud. As I mentioned, we are seeing financial services industries, retailers, manufacturing, e-commerce, oil and gas, all of these companies, even healthcare is now moving databases to the cloud. And most people are building some of these new applications, as I mentioned, mobile applications or web applications, and some of these new applications, you want to provision these databases in the cloud for that. That's one option. The second is also migration, right, where you want to migrate existing databases from on-premises to the cloud as well. We see mostly today, I would say 70% are mostly new type of applications people are building and then leveraging databases for in the cloud, and 30% being migrations. But we're going to start to see also migrations as well in the cloud. But again, migrations is one part of the element because you can also leverage hybrid as well, as I mentioned. Um, so while mostly operational and analytical deployments exist today in the cloud, transactional cloud databases option is also growing at a faster pace. So we definitely see transactions making its way as becoming a very dominant kind of workload running in the cloud, because most of them have been today, operational reporting and warehouse and analytical deployments in the cloud, but transactions also make sense because transactional people need low latency access and information. Imagine that you're trying to implementations which are more global transactions, or so you want actually a global platform for that, right? The good thing with cloud is that cloud could be also distributed. You can have running into multi-cloud environments, right? In multiple different clouds, could be AWS or Azure, Google platforms. So you actually have multiple of these cloud platforms, but also in different locations as well, because you may have operations running in Asia Pacific and in Europe and US. So definitely offers you that flexibility out there in terms of deployments. Further automation is obviously going to happen with the cloud databases, which will evolve from a self-tuning, serverless database architecture, self-patching, secure administration, scale and performance. I mean, all of these are going to improve. Today, what people know, what are the solutions that exist in the cloud is good enough to actually make you a good strategy for the cloud. But I even expect more further innovation from vendors around the tuning, around the patching, the administration. These capabilities will even further improve through additional machine learning capabilities, through advanced artificial intelligence (AI) capabilities. Those things will obviously improve as well. the goal obviously is for organizations to focus on business problems, right? Like how do we actually do improve my the bottom line in terms of my products and services. Um, Hybrid cloud obviously adoption will triple actually from existing 12%. Hybrid cloud has been a bit slower in adoption. Obviously, first you have to get to the cloud, and then you start to look at hybrid cloud. But hybrid cloud is not just about spreading your resources between on-premises and cloud, but also is leveraging the cloud as an extension of your on-premises platform from a CPU, memory, disk perspective. I need more resources from a storage perspective. I need more resources from compute perspective for on-premises applications. Well, that's what hybrid cloud would actually enable you to do, right? And again, we're going to see a lot more adoption and innovation around this, which I think will actually increase. We have also seen a lot of companies asking about hybrid cloud more recently. So they definitely are putting plans together around these deployments. Okay, next slide. So I guess the recommendations is not all cloud databases are equal. There are many cloud databases today available for you to choose from. So look closely. Not just because it's a cloud database doesn't mean that it'll be the best database for you, for your environment, for your criteria. You can look at very closely at the scale, look closely at the security offering from the vendors, look closely at the performance, high availability, even cost as well, as I mentioned about the hidden cost. Because sometimes all of these services could be extended services, which may not be part of the standard services. So but I think the more important thing is you have to look at your requirements. Like if I'm building a database, like what all databases do I need? What size of database do I need to build? Is it 5 terabytes, 10 terabytes, 100 terabyte? How many users are going to connect to it? What kind of loading and unloading of data is going to exist? What kind of security things I need to have? Encryption, masking, tokenization, auditing, monitoring. Those kind of things would be important in a cloud database environment as well. Um, Cloud databases require extra security focus. I need to put emphasis on security, just because we did actually a survey, actually interestingly 5 years ago on a cloud environments. 85% of people were concerned about security back 5 years ago. Today it's down to 32%. People are concerned about security. The number one concern people have in the cloud is security. The second being latency. So these two are concerns. But 32%, the highest is still security. It's down from 85, by the way, because there's a lot of security innovation that's happened in the cloud to actually build better monitoring, better control of data from protection perspective, from a security perspective. So that definitely has enabled a lot more improvements, and we're going to see more in the coming years as well, where you're going to see more innovation, which will becoming more intelligent from a security perspective. Hybrid cloud databases are evolving. Not all the vendors offer this capability, as mentioned, leveraging the best of the worlds both the worlds on premises and the cloud from a security, performance, integration, governance, scale perspective. Uh, Certainly, as I mentioned, why would people really go with a hybrid cloud? Sometimes it's just because of security reasons that I want to stay data on premises, especially seen in the financial services sector and healthcare. I would say more prominently on the hybrid side, but certainly, and sometimes you have mainframe data, legacy data sitting there, which it's cumbersome to move sometimes, right? But this is a good opportunity to even rethink your strategy. I know a lot of companies are also thinking that, hey, I may not be wanting to keep my legacy data on premises because it's difficult to manage some of those things as well. So this is a good opportunity actually to move data onto the cloud as well, right? So you got a choices there. Make sure you look at cloud providers SLA. I think SLA is a critical discussion point, which says that okay, what are the SLAs which are provided by the vendor? Is it is it three nines, four nines, five nines, what have you, right? What kind of disaster recovery support exists, right? How many data centers do they really have around this, which I think makes it a lot of improvement as well. So this is something to consider in terms of SLAs, what exists today, what's available for customers to deploy. Both the cloud and hybrid cloud database, cloud should be part of your database strategy to support existing and new generation businesses. You know, I would say obviously start with the cloud first before you go to hybrid cloud, because cloud actually will actually open up the whole platform. Well, the platform in terms of your policies, your architectures towards leveraging the benefits from a scale and latency and all the good stuff which can bring from the cloud, and then look at hybrid. Maybe certain applications may not migrate so easily. That's where the hybrid cloud kicks in, I guess, to your advantage. All right. Next slide.
Hey, Noel, we had a couple of questions on that, and I think your comment about the security kind of brought it up. Is how secure will clouds be in the future, and how will that added security affect the costs of the cloud platforms?
Well, I mean, first of all, the fact that security is a kind of ongoing initiative. Are we going to be 100% fully secure? We were never fully secure on premises today as well, right? I mean, people talk about, yeah, we're 100% secure on premises, yeah, but then we see all these breaches happening, right? All of the attacks are
Sure.
happening on premises as well. So I think we'll never be 100% on the cloud ever. Well, at least for next 5 years maybe. But the idea is actually is this going to offer better security? Now, cloud databases and cloud offers you an opportunity here to improve on what you already have, to identify what data exists in the cloud which needs to be more protected. Right now, I have seen organizations who have thousands of databases on premises, but they don't know which databases are containing sensitive data, what kind of things we need to protect. In the cloud, you have all this flexibility where you can discover data by these tools so easily, and then you can start to mask them. You can encrypt them. So I would say, there's a lot of improvements have happened over the last few years around cloud from a tokenization, masking, encryption, monitoring perspective, discovery perspective, which is why, we have seen banks now and healthcare organizations now are moving to the cloud, which we never saw before. 3 years ago, we never saw banks as money, large Fortune 1000 banks, which are moving to the cloud. Well, today they are actually moving to the cloud. Obviously, you got to protect, their data. You want to make sure encryption and vulnerability assessments and masking, auditing is all enabled, which is why I'm stressing on that word on security. But from a cost perspective, I would say it's still cost effective to move to the cloud, despite the fact that you would be putting a lot of emphasis on cloud. You still actually save a lot from a resource perspective.
Yeah, and I think related to that too, Noel, was another question that we got, which is, are there specific security certifications that people should be looking at for the cloud?
Yeah, and I'm not the security guru. I don't know what
Sure.
the certifications exist. I'm sure there are several of those, but I don't actually know about the certifications. So it could be a good follow up, I guess. To another
Yeah.
analyst, I guess.
Sounds good. Well, I'm going to go through some of mine. I'm going to touch on that a little bit as well in my slides, and then everyone, you should keep asking questions because it's great to get some good questions, and we'll finish up the questions when we get to the end of the presentation as well. So just a few notes about us, and at Enterprise DB, we've been working in the cloud for quite some time. We've got some history in the world of Amazon and delivering databases as a service, both in the public cloud and in hybrid cloud, having released being leaders in the Postgres community, the biggest contributor and committer in that, and a leader in the Forrester DBaaS wave, and then we also do a lot around Oracle compatibility, because one of the things we find is that when people are replatforming to the cloud, they're also looking for ways that they can maybe change the database infrastructure, because the underlying characteristics of the platform change. It's a great opportunity to try to escape maybe the old school ways of doing things, and it's a great time to take advantage of open source. We've been doing that with lots of customers, and both around the world, in terms of the Fortune 500 and the Global 2000s of the world, and delivering a real high performance and cost effective platform for open data management. And what we're seeing is that the adoption of databases is very consistent with what Noel was saying earlier about people moving many of their workloads into the cloud environment. It's grown, to close to 20% of our overall deployments from customers these days has been moving in that direction, which is really exciting when you see that evolution. But I think it's also really valuable to be in an environment where you can have the same database platform, no matter whether it's in the public cloud, in the private cloud, on-premise, just on standard, bare metal, or on VMs. And that's the kind of environment we like to give people. It's, being able to run our database software, the Postgres software, in the cloud, and also being able to deliver that through a self-service portal for a DBaaS, and being able to provide, going to some of the security questions, being able to also provide some of the remote DBA services. I think one of the things we always see around security is, the cloud service providers, whether that's Microsoft Azure or AWS or Alibaba's cloud, they provide a lot of good infrastructure for providing security and give you the platform that allows you to deliver that securely. But a lot of times people need some help in terms of actually how to use that platform in a way that actually ensures that you're actually complying and using it in a secure way. And that's a place where, having that DBA advice and support helps. We do that across all the major clouds. More and more, we're seeing people taking advantage of containers as a way to have a portable interface between private and public. As if you're moving beyond that initial foray into the public cloud as your first, as Noel said, first step, go to the public cloud, but then be thinking about hybrid, because that's a great way to build flexibility, not just in the public cloud but also on premises. And containers, we're finding more and more as being a way people are looking to deliver that kind of value proposition. And so we really are looking to that as a future for many times how people are deploying in the cloud. And then what we do in terms of the managed DBaaS and the database as a service, providing a real dedicated offering and tailored offering, where as opposed to having a one-size-fits-all DBaaS where everybody's in a multi-tenant world of RDS or Amazon Aurora or SQL Azure, we actually provide the ability to create your own DBaaS and have it very tailored and customized, and give you full access and full control over the environment as an administrator, as a DBA within your enterprise. So you can create a more enterprise-specific experience for users and have more control and more governance over that environment in that way, and just making it easier for you to help your users to ensure that in their transition to the cloud, they're getting the most out of that environment and doing it in a way that's consistent with your business practices and policies. We certainly see kind of key things there. The flexibility, optimizing the performance, security, availability, compatibility. I think, again, with the Oracle compatibility, we find that as being a really important thing as you move to the cloud, along with security is, top of mind issues. And so with that, maybe I'll go back and we'll maybe return to some of the questions. I see some folks have had a few more questions as I was going through that. What are the major, and Noel, I'll probably point these to you, but what are the major aspects to be considered while measuring the ROI on the cloud of a cloud database?
I think if you look at it in terms of the major aspect for the ROI, you have to obviously look at, what are the things in terms of resources? What is the cost per the storage, unit and a compute unit, right? That's very important because you can actually assess the calculations about, okay, if I'm using today 16 cores or 32 core machine today on premises, what would be the equivalent cost factor on the cloud? So the compute metrics and the storage metrics are important. The good thing with cloud also is that you know you could actually just move data to the cloud. You don't have to use the compute. Sometimes the compute is scalable as well, which means that you can add additional cores as needed, and you can scale it back as well. So the good thing is the ROI, I guess, metrics is mostly around the compute and storage. That's one element. The second element is the administration benefits you achieve in the cloud actually. And that actually is actually no, you can actually save money, I guess, because the fact that you don't need so many DBAs actually working on so many different databases. The DBAs can now focus on things like disaster recovery and high availability and all. I mean, they don't have to start looking at backup and recovery, small elements, right? They could be automated. So think about the savings you can actually achieve as a result of that, right? The administration benefits, the ROI benefits tied towards administration. So it's a combination of resources from a compute and storage. Is also a combination of the administration benefits. So when we calculate the ROI, TCO of these, those to be considered as well. Plus also the downtime, right? Typically, cloud providers will offer you a better availability technically than on premises, I guess, because on premises sometimes availability, getting a 3 nines or even 5 nines is sometimes challenging because you have to have replication, you have to have redundancy and all those things. So the cloud offers you that whole benefits around the ROI model actually is benefited because of the uh, built-in disaster recovery, high availability, options available, right? So they tend to be again lower cost instead of you having a duplicated and replicated server on premises, which may be very expensive. I know organizations have spent millions of dollars trying to have redundant servers, and the redundant server is doing nothing actually, sitting there idle actually. The 16 CPU machine is just idle, right? So on premises, well, you don't care about that. You only pay for the usage, and you pay for the disaster recovery, high availability on if it fails over, if it fails to another environment. And in fact, even if it fails over, you may not even know that actually, because the cloud actually is all so very well integrated, right? So yeah, so some of those elements I think would be important in the ROI discussion.
Good. And we'll take a few more. We probably won't get through all the questions, but we'd certainly appreciate them. We'll be following up with those, after the session to make sure we can answer as much as we can. One of the questions I see here is really interesting to me because it's what is the future of the DBA with regard to automation and most of the services. I think this touched on some of the things you said, Noel, but I actually have a talk. We have we note on this slide here, we've got our Postgres Vision event coming up in Boston, June 5th and 6th, coming right up. And I actually have a talk specifically about the future of a DBA in the cloud that I'll be giving at that session, and we'll probably roll that out in some other formats as well if you can't make that. But hopefully some folks will be able to make that call as well. I don't know whether, Noel, you may have some thoughts on that one as well.
Yeah. So the future. So I've been tracking DBA functions and roles for more than a decade at Forrester, and previously, remember 10 years ago, we used to spend a lot of time in tuning and optimization and backup and recovery and all. Well today, people are spending more time on obviously complex tuning, I guess, still exists, I guess, but the fact is that you still need to have certain elements of those. As an automation perspective, what we're seeing is that the system itself, from a cloud perspective, is becoming more self-service enabled, and what it means is that the tuning, the backup recovery, the patching is very important of systems. Upgrades to the systems become very important. these are going to become more automated, autonomous as much as possible in going forward. So what are the DBAs going to do? Well, DBAs, a couple of things. Number one is obviously focusing more on the business issues and ensuring that these databases are available all the time. So the focusing on the disaster recovery, high availability becomes more even critical, I guess, and I think also security. As I mentioned, we're not going to get away with security, I guess, anytime soon. But the DBA is going to be focusing more on security because cloud enables you to go to cloud. But guess what? Well, security still could be a bigger threat, I guess, right, from a hacker perspective. So I think security, backup, the security, high availability, disaster recovery will be the key functions of the DBAs, along with provisioning more larger databases. We are expecting even larger databases going forward, I guess, which are running into hundreds and hundreds of terabytes into petabytes. So the fact is that a bit of planning and those kind of things will be important as well. Tuning, backup recovery, those kind of things are going to be starting to diminish for DBAs going forward, especially for the cloud. But definitely, other things will become more prominent, as I mentioned, the security part of it, the high availability, disaster recovery, certain planning for the new generation of applications you're building, and the volumes of data, obviously, which have to be planned for as well.
Yep. Yeah. And definitely, I think to summarize a bit, I think overall, what we're seeing in the evolution of that role of the DBA is really taking it up a level where, it's becoming much more of a data-oriented role, more strategic role, a data services. You can kind of think of it as a data services administrator as opposed to a database administrator in some ways, as you go into that. And that's, I think, really important. And actually, it touches on another question we had specifically about the service, the remote DBA service, which is the question was it something that we offer or Amazon? It's actually something that Enterprise DB offers, and it is actually that role of having a remote DBA that provides those kind of higher level, more strategic, more data centric functions around security and guidance and how do you actually manage your data, optimize your data, ensure that you're complying with security and privacy requirements. And that's something we do as part of that remote DBA service that goes well above and beyond the basic DBA capabilities of automation that you do get in a DBAS service just from the machinery and the automation. So yes, that's a big deal for us, an important part of us. We had another question, which was a little bit EDB specific too, was how well does EDB function in managed containers in a Docker environment? It says specifically Docker, but we also look at Kubernetes as an environment. In terms of orchestration, we have our own containers, and I think that's probably true with EDB for Postgres and for our Oracle compatible Postgres. We have containers to let you operate those in a Kubernetes or an OpenShift Red Hat environment or other managed Kubernetes environments like IBM Cloud Private, for example, things like that. So those are things that we do support and deliver. Other vendors do that. Noel, I'm sure you're aware that you work with other vendors. I think it's becoming a normal way of delivering software these days.
So I have a question for you. I mean, why would a customer, I guess, what kind of use cases are there for having EDB on the Kubernetes, scenarios?
Yeah. So what we're seeing with Kubernetes actually is it tends to be still early days, and so a lot of people are doing development and test primarily in those environments today, where they're using the container environments as a way to scale out and test very large scale deployments and things. They also use Kubernetes as a way of orchestrating availability and failover a bit, which is nice. But we're seeing more and more people looking at Kubernetes, at least thinking about it as a way to give them some of the benefits of cloud with the elasticity of cloud and the dynamicism, but in an environment where maybe on premises they don't have a private cloud exactly. What they have on premises is more of a virtualization environment, VMware or Windows virtualization environment where they're operating in that way. And that's they're getting cloud benefits, but not without the investment in something like OpenStack or a true private cloud infrastructure is one of the big things. And then the portability, because of course you can run Kubernetes on Amazon, on your VMware platform or in Google in a pretty consistent way. So that's why we're seeing some rapid adoption in that area.
No, I think it makes sense, because interestingly, over the last 1 year, we've been getting a lot of inquiries on Kubernetes, and you're right. I mean, I think it's very early on, but definitely getting a lot of traction, and a lot of people, I guess, are looking at those opportunities, especially as in the cloud platforms, especially when you're looking at all these containers that have to be managed in a more simplified manner. When you have these hundreds and thousands of containers, it becomes a bit more difficult, I guess, and Kubernetes is becoming like the de facto standard for some of these deployments out there. So, and then we've seen this in different organizations who are putting plans together in supporting these environments. So yeah, I mean, it's good.
Yeah. We had another question about, some of the cloud deployments, and it was around, the integration of databases in the cloud with data warehouses and, using ETL or other tools how do you actually connect those?
Yeah. I mean, so that's a very good question, actually, because silos obviously exist a lot, I guess, and there are ETL tools out there, which are obviously open source, and some of the commercial providers, right? From Informatica to Talent, Pentaho, SAS, SAPs. But there are many of these ETL providers who actually have been providing ETL solutions. But the goal obviously is to provide that layer of abstraction that when you put the data into like a cloud database environment, what kind of loading of data is required? Some of the data is obviously changing into streaming, kind of a notion of what you call pipelining, data pipelines. So obviously, I know there are cloud vendors who are providing now data pipelining, which actually moves data in from these different sources on a continuous manner, where you can transform the data and put this into a warehouse or in a cloud database. So it's pretty effective, and I think to the point I was mentioning earlier on, the customer database, which is a good candidate for cloud. That requires obviously integration from these sources, and you can actually use ETL tools. You can write your scripts to do it, and I'm sure I guess Enterprise DB, I'm sure is also doing certain elements around some certain integration with partners and what have you, which also enables that as well, right? So
that's right, yeah. And actually, one of the use cases we see oftentimes is maybe folks aren't quite ready to put their operational systems into the cloud, but maybe they actually have a data lake or something that they have in the cloud, and they want to do replication. Maybe they're running replication from on-premise in the cloud. Now, obviously, you have to be careful about the volumes and the amount of bandwidth you have and the connectivity and the latency that might require. But it is something we're seeing people do. And so for different use cases, it's one of the places where we're seeing real hybrid use cases as opposed to just, multi-cloud use cases. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Touching about multi-cloud, multi-cloud obviously is gaining traction as well. Even though adoption is a bit lower at the moment, less than 10% in true multi-cloud, but definitely I think organizations should also be looking at solutions that are multi-cloud enabled, because you want to be able to leverage cloud providers who's got the best of the capabilities, whether they actually have better integration capabilities or application capabilities sometimes, or specific use case scenarios which they may have better suited. So solutions, I guess, running multi-cloud scenarios are definitely are seen more viable for long-term cloud deployments.
Yeah, another thing there is also the regions in which the clouds operate, because certainly sometimes for regulatory reasons, people need to be, within country for certain pieces of their data for privacy and regulatory reasons. So that's another reason we see people go into that multi-cloud scenario, because not everybody does every geography. Yeah. So we're closing in on the top of the hour. So I want to be mindful of everyone's time and let them get back to their workday. But I certainly appreciate all it. We didn't get through all the questions. I apologize for that. I think they're it was, we just had a lot of interest. I think, it was a real interesting topic. So therefore we had a lot of folks answering questions. We'll be following up on those questions, both the ones that we answered on the call and as I said, we'll make the recording available. We will be making the slides available, so you'll be able to see those and share them with other people in your organization. And certainly happy to answer further questions after the call as well. If you email us here at Enterprise DB, you can see the contact of info at Enterprise DB. And certainly we'd love to see, take advantage of the promo code for our Postgres Vision event coming up here for the webinar 25 to get a discount for the registration there, and love to see you there, and share with you my vision of the future of the DBA as well, and as one of the sessions there. But at that, I think we're wrapping it up, and thanks once again. Thank you, Noel. Thank you for all the attendees, and have a great day and a great weekend.